We all start somewhere. If you want to get good at anything, whether it's writing, painting, or swimming, all starts with a single stroke. And expertise then comes with time and practice. Olympians, athletes at the peak of their sport, all had to start by taking their first step that would later take them on to reach milestones of higher competition. Similarly, to build wealth, you have to start somewhere. It starts by learning skills like budgeting and tracking spending, and with time leads to investing and owning assets. Hey, I'm Sean. I've talked about saving the first $1,000, $10,000, and explained my personal net worth journey before, but a milestone made famous by Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, mentions the first $100,000 being a bitch. I've talked about why this is a pivotal moment in growing your net worth, and it's because over a year of investing half of that in an index fund would give you the same increase in net worth as trying to save $300 a month. It's where your investments can start to make an impact on your net worth on their own, and savings begins to be less impactful. I hit this milestone in my 20s, but not without my challenges. While I was working a comfortable office job at a school, the moment you start to make any money seems to be the same moment the rest of the world reaches out to snatch it away. Whether in the form of selling you products, taxing you, or just presenting you with new opportunities. But there are many things we do to ourselves that seem harmless at the time, but eat away at your success of reaching this milestone too. Many of these I've learned from doing them, or in retrospect have noticed that avoiding them really fast-tracked my own progress. The big number we get focused on is salary coming out of school. Why wouldn't we? We just spent the last 17 years in school for this very moment, to get our first job. Time to make it rain like a Lil Wayne music video. Well, surprisingly, many of the pitfalls to 100K will seem like problems of someone earning a lot more money, but trust me, the temptations are the same for everyone, just less dangerous for those with the privilege of earning a comfortable salary. To a 20-something, finally having a salary means we can now afford a car payment, a mortgage, or of course we need to go on vacation and motorbikes and electronics are nice, and we understand finances to be a simple equation. If I want more, I need to afford more, so I've got to earn more. And so I embarked on a mission to quickly increase my salary early on, even challenging myself to have a certain annual salary by the next year with no basis for any of these numbers. The problem with this simple equation is that it makes us hyper-focused on salary, possibly bending to the demands of our jobs. Then, if we think it's okay for our spending to equal our salary with no room for error, we are now in the hamster wheel and the perfect customer for consumerism. I'll be honest, the first step is just being aware. We aren't born knowing how to build wealth, and if we don't know any better, we are easily swayed to do with money whatever feels good at the time, or whatever is being sold to us. This is something I lived with. I spent a lot of time in my 20s researching the next thing I wanted to buy. While I didn't have a ton of stuff, about 2 weeks after I bought that new TV, I found some new gizmo to buy or upgrade, whether it was a guitar, camera, or whatever. It took me a while to realize that material objects didn't keep me happy for very long, but luckily nothing I bought put me in debt or, kept me from saving. Spending really gets dangerous when we stop even thinking about if something would make us happy and spend to impress others. How often are we looking at clothes or a car thinking about how great we'd look in it? Only my close friends can probably even remember the car I'm driving, and the older, wiser me wonders why I'd care about what someone I don't know even thinks. Someone who will see my clothes or car for a few seconds and then I'll never see them again. Now, for the friends that will remember or notice this kind of stuff, if you are trying to better your situation and you have to make tough, responsible decisions to get there, and your friends are going to look down on you for doing so, I'm not so sure you'll need them or that they'll even still be there when you hit your milestone anyway. And imagine if you had friends who instead had the same goals, how different those conversations would be and how much less you'd have to hide your ambitions. Another factor amplifying these habits in your 20s is you're new at your job. You have your whole career ahead of you, and if life is this good now, it could only get better, right? My 20s were the honeymoon period of my career. It's way better than being a starving student, and I felt I could do this forever. Or could I? A lot happens in a decade. An industry can cycle through booms and busts. You could obviously lose a job, but with time you may also find that your role or company is not where you want to be for the next 35 to 45 years. What then? Through your 20s, I'm sure you will have tried to succeed at your work, and maybe you do, but what if you don't? The lens with which you view your job can completely change. A few years go by and you may have kids. What if you have found meaning doing something completely different than your career at that point? Then what? Do you have the money to take time off and get new training? To start a small business? You may not be as enchanted by your job to work there forever or put in the extra effort trying to move up the ladder. That comfort in the beginning makes concerns about money seem like a future you problem. But if we're not careful, and especially if we don't talk about our financial situation with our friends, we start to assume that what we see on Instagram pages are the real milestones we should be at. If your friends got a new car, they aren't going to talk about their financing terms. If they bought a house, they aren't discussing their 25-year commitment to the bank on Facebook. And best case scenario, if they aren't in debt for these things, they probably haven't shown the journey it took to save up for these items. Instead, we only see the end result, and so we try to keep up. Even if it's beyond our means, we can rack up those credit cards. Average household debt in Canada is $20,000, and in the US it's over $90,000, about $16,000 for Gen Zs and $87,000 for millennial households. This is made up mostly of credit card debt and car loans and student debt. For the first two, our instinct to impress others definitely plays in, and noticing that early can avoid this huge pitfall. As far as student loans go, they are typically at lower interest rates but have different challenges. We are all assumed to go to get more education after high school, but if your field of interest has poor job prospects, you may need a plan B. Maybe a way to get an education at a cheaper institution, or you may be having a tough conversation with your parents as to why post-secondary isn't the smartest move. Another big change comes in your 20s, which is moving out, the ultimate feeling of freedom and making it. Knowing what I know now about how time affects investments, this is where you can leapfrog a few years to get to your milestone. We are all in different situations and have different relationships with our parents, but should you have the opportunity and patience to stay at home for even a year after you start your career, you can shave multiple years getting to 100K and even more time getting to financial independence. Of course, home needs to be a safe place for you, so this is a privilege to exploit if you can. Now, if you're still here, you're probably saying, well, Sean, sounds like you're asking me to have zero fun in my 20s, and maybe while the general tips sound that way, it's far from my experience. I've done a lot in my 20s. I've purchased a few used cars, I've gone on tons of trips, visited 25 countries, and eaten at more restaurants than I can count. But what I'd ask of you is just to be self-aware of what everything you spend your money on makes you feel. For me, I just noticed most of the material things I bought just didn't keep me happy for very long. Instead, I noticed that the experiences I had kept me satisfied for much longer. And even if there is a material object that I love, it is probably tied to some experience, like a souvenir from a trip. I'd actually say the opposite. You may never make it to 100K if you're too ambitious, too strict with yourself. Allow yourself to take breaks, to spend a little bit here and there on the things you love, things that matter, or else you won't enjoy the journey and you'll be much more likely to give up. This is a marathon, not a sprint. This is where budgeting comes in. Despite popular belief that budgets are there to restrict your spending, they are really just tools for you to control it. A monthly budget gives you feedback on how you're doing and lets you adjust for the next month. And it's also your opportunity to carve out a little something for yourself as a reward without putting your 100K milestone in jeopardy. And so budgets actually give you the freedom to spend. A way I found to enhance this is to automate a lot of my finances. Money for savings and investing comes right out of my bank account automatically at the start of the month. Any basic bills are automated, and transactions on my credit card send notifications to my phone. So I'm checking that there are no shady transactions and making kind of a mental note that money was spent. And yes, some months we have bigger bills and a few surprise expenses, and after our credit card is paid, it feels like we just made it through the month. But remembering that I've paid myself first by taking the savings off the top means progress has been made automatically. Now, just like in any other space, if you're not careful, personal finance can become just another comparison game. Say you're lucky enough to talk about this with friends, or you see influencers posting how much money they have invested or saved. Do not compare yourself to them. We are in such different situations that it makes no sense to do so. Think about it. How would I, a first-generation Canadian from an immigrant family, compete with someone starting with generational wealth, or who has a trust fund, or a person in a profession that pays more than mine? Maybe you have to send money overseas to parents, or are supporting a sibling by paying for their health care. Life is messy, and you put yourself under unnecessary stress when you start to compare these types of things. So instead of a competition with others, view this as going for a personal best. Try to beat your savings goals from last year. When your annual salary increase comes along, you'll treat it much differently than if you had no goals at all. Give yourself the permission to take some time to do this. It's a long-term goal. You've got to handle your business, so the difference may be a bit of extra time, but eventually you'll be at the same place as those you are wishing you could be like right now. So that said, I hit my first 100K at 26 years of age, and to revisit my previous point, look at the difference between the time it took to hit 100K and 200K, about 2.5 years, and those time intervals shortened. And at 32, after combining our superpowers, my wife and I follow the same principles to really set this thing on turbo. Most importantly for us, we've created memories along the way that allow ourselves to give generously to the community too. But instead of worrying about the first 500K or a million, get to that first milestone. This goal is an experience, a test of endurance, so reward yourself along the way. Adjust as life changes and make it a personal goal, not a competition. The last ingredient is giving yourself permission to wait. All that's left is time, and when you do, you'll get there. Not only will you get there, but your relationship with money will be different when you do, and that change, that maturity, is what will carry you far beyond the first 100K. Again, my name is Sean. If you found this video informative or inspiring, please click the like button to help it get out to more people. I make videos about personal finance and investing, so if you're into that, hit the subscribe button, click the notification bell, and follow for more. Till next time, you guys have a great week. Spread the wealth. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.